Hello everybody, Psyche here, and given that we're only a couple days away from the Valentine's event, and that the two new maid units are here with their kit fully released, I'm just gonna do a quick analysis of what I think of them and whether or not I will be pulling for them personally. And first of all, this goes without saying, but this analysis comes purely from a perspective of meta or gameplay, so if you just like either unit because of how they look or their personality, then just go ahead and pull. So first, let's take a look at Ade, who has been in NPC jail for a year, and she's going to be released as a Type 2 supporter as an assault rifle user. The first skill will net everyone an instance of debuff immunity, and I know the wording here can be a little bit ambiguous, but to my understanding, based on how the wording phrases it, I'm assuming that when the battle starts, she will kind of give everyone a status where it will negate the next instance that a debuff is put on a unit, and if a debuff is attempted, and then the debuff immunity status is erased. When Ade's own health is below 90%, she will buff everyone by a very small percentage of her attack for 5 seconds. Now, assuming that this is at skill level 10, 5.19% is not very good, especially if you compare this to something like Leader, who literally buffs everyone by 50% attack. Skill 2 activates after 420 normal attacks. Everyone will gain another instance of debuff immunity permanently until it is erased. So you will have to completely empty 7 magazines in order for this to take into effect. It's not very frequent, however, I'm guessing you're not going to need it that often anyway, so this really isn't that big of a deal. The second portion, after 120 normal attacks, everyone will gain a max HP buff without restoring HP. This does happen more frequently at every 2 magazines, and max HP buffs can actually matter for select DPS units like 2B, but for the moment the roster isn't exactly as expanded in that regard, so this is just more of a niche buff. And lastly, the burst. Everyone will again gain a max HP buff, but this time lasting for 10 whole seconds, as well as a modest 10% attack up. Again, this fits more into the niche of HP buffing. However, again, this kind of niche doesn't really exist in the game yet. There's only a very select few units that can take advantage of this. So overall, you can kind of see that Ade specializes in debuff immunity as well as HP buffing. I gotta say, not exactly the most universally used buffs, but given that we're also getting a raid boss that I'm gonna talk about a bit later, something that the game does is that it will kind of tailor the current challenge content to whichever characters are on raid up. So I have no doubt that the next solo raid boss will obviously demand some kind of debuff immunity, so at the very least it will be kind of useful there, I'm assuming. Next up is Maid Privaty, and her kit looks a bit more promising. Type 3 attacker, shotgun user, electric code. Skill 1, after landing 30 times using pellets, the 2 nearest enemies to the crosshair will be dealt an instance of damage. So this is the first time that a DPS user has referenced pellets, and if you recall, we just got a unit that buffs the amount of pellets that shotguns fire out, that is Leona. Unfortunately, I did not pull for Leona, so I won't be able to test it out after Privaty is released, but we can only assume that they will have at least some degree of synergy there. To my understanding, shotguns will fire out 10 pellets by default, however it's a little bit hard to keep track of it unless the enemy is literally right in front of you. Because even if you land 9 out of 10 pellets, then you're gonna have to fire a total of 4 times instead of just 3 to get this effect. So assuming that the best case scenario, the enemy is right in front of you, and you fire 3 shots where all 10 of the pellets hit each time, then this effect will happen every 3 shots, or if you have Leona, best case scenario, this skill can trigger only every 2 shots, so that is a fairly sizable bonus. Skill 2. When a single attack has more than 5 pellets hit, she will gain a reload speed buff for 2 seconds. This should be easily doable as long as the enemy is not like within sniper distance. If it is a fairly large target where it's right in front of you, I have no doubt that Privaty will be able to keep up this buff continuously. The next portion is that after hitting 30 times using pellets during full burst, she will reload 1 round as well as gain an attack up to 5 times. Again, assuming that you're not trying to use a shotgun within sniper distance, you should be able to get this in a decent amount of times during the full burst. And in addition to that, if you also have a copy of Tove from last year, she can buff the attack speed of shotgun users, meaning if you have certain buffs in place like max ammo capacity overload lines as well as a bastion or a resilience cube, then you should be able to trigger this a lot more often. And finally, the burst, a healthy dose of attack damage up and critical damage up. So attack damage up is calculated differently than just an attack up, which means this is actually a better buff versus if it was just attack. And the next portion is a dose of AoE screen wipe damage. Scaling off final attack, which is actually what I like to see there. So on paper alone, the maid version of Privaty actually looks fairly decent, which I'm anticipating to be ranking a 4 or 5 out of 5, at least in terms of my own standards. And again, this is the first time we've seen them kind of go into this niche with pellets for shotgun users. And just to confirm, if you were able to pull a copy of Leona, a major misconception that has been confirmed by an official tweet is that increasing the number of pellets does not actually increase the damage. In the meantime, I can see a good shotgun team if you run allies like Tove, Leona, Privaty, and then another shotgun user and then a healer of some kind. Of course, this does leave you without a CDR unit. However, there are cases where if there's enough offense put into the team, then you don't exactly need it. Shotgun comps don't exactly work well in campaign levels and only work decently in select bosses. However, given the upcoming solo raid that we actually got a teaser for, we're going to be seeing a brand new boss by the name of Crystal Chamber. And what do you know, it has a weak element of electric and effective range for shotgun users. For the time being, my current plans are to pull for 1 copy of Privaty, and since that both Ade and Privaty are going to be in the standard pool after the event ends, I don't think it's necessary to be in such a rush to max limit break them. My personal philosophy is that if you can get away with not pulling a unit, then just don't pull it. If you're missing either Tove or Leona, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Just like Samuranis, there are going to be other comps that you can try out too. And if you're someone that typically doesn't participate in solo raids, I would recommend participating in this one at the very least, as there is a unique avatar border and it does look pretty sick. Anyways, that is what I think of the 2 new maids, Ade and Privaty. Let me know what you think or if you will be pulling for them. Thanks for tuning in to this quick analysis video, and I'll see you in the Valentine's event.